the Jets lose, obviously Curry, and one of the big signings, Karl Lawson. What were your thoughts when you heard that Karl Lawson was out for the season with the Achilles, the ruptured Achilles, and now this blood situation, which could end Curry's career? It came out today. What was your thought when you heard about that?
I just hate it, man, with all these injuries and period. Like, can we not just have God turn these things off at this point? I guess my one hope would be with at least in regards to the Achilles injury. So, particularly for running backs, like when Cam Akers got hurt, we just hear, the history of the injury. It's absolutely brutal. I will say, though, two guys, O.J. Howard and C.J. Uzomah, who suffered the ruptured Achilles last year, they're back in the preseason. Same with Marlon Mack. That's three. I'm not a freaking doctor. I'm not sure if we've had a breakthrough or whatever. I will say, not that long ago, torn ACLs were seen as a career ender. Now we basically expect the person to be ready to go by week one. So I'm really hopeful, the Achilles at least, maybe modern medicine is working its miracle and we're getting in a better spot with that. As for the blood clot, man, like, what can you do? If the guy was in danger, I mean, man, I'm happy they found it. I remember growing up, and there's one of the best kids I played with in middle school just goes to the doctor one day, and they say, hey, man, there's something wrong with your back. You can never play football again. So it's absolutely brutal. I can't imagine what he's going through, but, just hope for the best.
So staying with the Jets, Zach Wilson's had a very impressive preseason so far, his first two games. So what is your expectations of him and your impressions of him as a quarterback so far, both for real life football and also for fantasy? Is it still somebody that's a streaming guy, or is it someone that you're willing to draft late?
I'm now getting in on him in that last tier of quarterbacks. Between him and Tua, I think they definitely supersede guys like Daniel Jones, Ben Roethlisberger, Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz. All that group. Everything we've seen from Zach Wilson, I think, has been absolutely fantastic. And it's not that we didn't know he was capable of making these throws, but for him to now do it on an NFL field with the New York Jets, I mean, it sure as hell helps to see, because I understand he's playing against backups, but at least he's playing great against the backups. I mean, at least we're not having to have that conversation about it not mattering. And, even in that Green Bay game, man, that first throw he made to Corey Davis for about 30 yards down the sideline after kind of reversing field in the pocket, absolutely spectacular. And then he has the back shoulder touchdown to Tyler Kroft. Broke my heart. I'm a Chris Herndon truther, so I always want them to go to him. But just perfect ball placement to Kroft. And those are, the types of throws and plays that really just stood out to me, because in the preseason, generally, I want to see first-team snap counts. That's how we get a better idea of the depth chart. Everyone thought Michael Carter was going to be the stud bell cow from week one. Now it's kind of looking like maybe he's the RB3. Maybe not. Either way, they're a hell of a lot better than the depth charts that the PR interns put out at the beginning of August. So for Zach Wilson to really make impressive plays, just like Marquez Callaway on the Saints, beating Shaq Griffin, the number one corner, for a big one-handed catch. Like, these aren't empty plays against complete nobodies. They're showing off a lot of the talent he had. So for me, Zach Wilson, like, Jets fans should be absolutely hyped about him. And in fantasy, yeah, I think, it's particularly for teams, in best ball when you're drafting 2-3 QBs. If you're in your one quarterback home league with your friends, you're good. But super flex and, these best balls, I think going with Zach is really giving yourself a very cheap way to a lot of upside.
So enough of this Jet talk, right? There's another team that plays in the same building, and we're talking about guys we have seen. We have yet to see Saquon Barkley take a live snap, and we're going on about a year and a half now. Do you have any concerns for Saquon as far as fantasy goes? And realistically, what are you expecting from Saquon when he does eventually get back on the field?
I mean, I wish he wasn't banged up. That'd be a lot easier to figure out. With that said, everything that I've heard about this situation, we're not hearing like Saquon's slow to progress or Saquon's had a setback or this and that. It's always been usually from Jordan Renan just saying like they have his long-term career interests in mind. Like I freaking hope so, but I mean, it's he's going along on schedule. And one of the guys I really respect in the industry, Dr. Edwin Porras, he works over at Fantasy Points. Like he's done these studies again on the torn ACLs and the specifics behind it. And his three main criteria for when we should expect guys to heal in a good timetable are when they have high draft capital. That's a sign of a freak athlete. I think we all know Saquon fits that build. If they're 24 or younger, and if they're going through a relatively non-complex injury. Now he said relatively there. I understand it was more than just the ACL. I think Dr. Porras has a better idea of what constitutes complex than, any of us sitting here. I don't know if I'm talking to some doctors. Maybe I am, but I'm just going out on a limb with that. I am concerned enough to move him down to RB6. But anything past that, man, like for the month or so, I was able to scoop this guy in, the first or second pick of these second rounds over at Underdog Fantasy. And, it felt like, just stealing the cookie out of the cookie jar to an extent. So I get not taking him like in the top 5 just because I think, between Zeke, CMC, Derrick Henry, Kamara, and Dalvin Cook, like you just don't have the injury concerns, and you have a very, similar touch count projection. But otherwise, man, I can't get behind any of those other guys because Saquon Barkley, for my money, is still the best running back alive when he is right.
Thank you.
We are talking to Pro Football Focus lead fantasy analyst and podcast host, Ian Hartitz. Now, Ian, we talk about, and I know he went to the Giants, and I understand because he's not a Jet fan, and that's fine. The thoughts of the Jets going after a defensive end. I mean, there were talks, Joe Douglas was going after Chandler Jones. There was also talks that they might wait until, obviously, certain players get cut before the preseason is over. Are you hearing anything right now for the New York Jets? Has anything come out on your way where the Jets are going to make a significant move at the pass rushing position, defensive end position?
Nah, man, I don't have those sources. What is funny, though, I've gotten one source in my life, and I actually got the Michael Thomas ankle news about 3 weeks before Schefter, and then those guys did, because a buddy of mine is friends with some old, like, Ohio State football players. Somehow I just get a text mid-podcast, and it was my buddy saying, like, wow, I just heard that, Michael Thomas is an idiot, didn't fix his ankle when he should have, and now he's going to miss like 6 months. So I remember saying that on the pod and being like, biggest grain of salt ever. I don't know anything. With that said, here we go. So I don't know. They could use the help. I get it. But I will say, I don't think either of the New York teams are going to have this defense that, teams are just straight up walking over. I mean, I think the Giants would be a little bit stronger than the Jets. I mean, Bradbury and Jackson, that's a hell of a 1-2 punch at corner, if I do say so myself. So we'll see. I mean, they could certainly use the edge rushing help now that they've had these injuries come to fruition. Maybe trying to think who could be on the block. Yeah, we'll see. I would guess, a move gets made in the next week or two because as we see a lot of times, when a team decides they're going to cut ties with their edge rusher, they send them for some 7th round pick or whatever before they actually let them be a free agent. So long way to say we'll see.
AFC, the New England Patriots made a significant amount of moves in the offseason. They needed to really drop the hammer with Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl with Tampa. They are playing the Patriots this year. Sonny Michel gets traded today for, if I'm not mistaken, a 5th or a 6th. It could be a 4th, depending how well the Rams play this year. Are you surprised with the Patriots' moves and Mac Jones? Do you think he wins the job over Cam Newton?
So I guess the only surprise with the moves, I didn't necessarily hate any of them. If they want to run a 2 tight end offense, well, they got, the 2 best available free agent tight ends we've seen in some time. Nelson Aguilar, as much as people want to keep going back to the dropping babies meme, which is funny. But he was fantastic with the Raiders last year. Maybe fantastic is a strong word, but he was very good. Like he was legit Derek's Carr, number 1 receiver on the league's 10th highest scoring offense. So Nelson Aguilar is a legit solid addition, and Jacoby. The offense should be in a much better place than it was last year, and the defense was already good. So optimism should be high. It was just funny to me, though, when they give Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, like the 2 biggest tight end deals we've pretty much ever seen in open free agency. And they signed Nelson Aguilar to a non-insignificant, to a pretty freaking significant deal, I should say. Then also Kendrick Bourne to more money than people were thinking, all in the first day. Like how badly did Belichick just want to get on vacation this year? So the moves themselves, I thought were fine enough. The money kind of, allotted to the guys was a little bit more interesting. Kind of seemed like, Belichick saying like, all right, I don't know how seemed like a guy that might coach forever, but my goodness, man, it seemed like someone also trying to maximize whatever window he's got left. So we'll see what happens.
So we talked about players on the Giants. How about a guy that was almost on the Giants that has been one of the most polarizing guys on whether they'll be either really good or iffy in the NFL, and that's Devonta Smith. And I know you're somebody that's a big truther of Devonta Smith. And as a Giants fan, I don't really want him to succeed, but I agree with you. I do think he will. So why do you think Devonta Smith, despite his size, will be a great player in the NFL?
It's funny, man. Like I did really well in NFL draft props this year, but I lost my biggest one, unfortunately, and that was Devontae under his draft position because a lot of people were saying he would go to the Giants, and I was like, kidding me? Gentleman could be the guy to draft, a sub 170-pound wide receiver in the first round? I don't freaking think so. Eagles trade up and get the guy. So, I'll take the L on that one. I never so much doubted the player. I doubted the NFL's kind of willingness to embrace someone like him. Like, I was surprised to see Waddle, who's not exactly a big guy either, go 6th overall. So it might just be the way, the game is moving. Rondale Moore is making a lot of big plays now. I mean, not big plays, but he's getting big utilization in these games as well. It would make sense. I mean, we just see like big hits that are clean just get flagged because they're almost too violent these days. I mean, football is so much different than it was 15 years ago. I don't know that pulling these 30-year studies and saying, well, only this handful of successful wide receivers that played at under 170 pounds, because again, the game is just so different. And I think we saw flashes of that in the last preseason game. Devontae and definitely Jamar Chase need to work on, not dropping the football, but we know those guys can catch the ball. Devontae, man, that whip route he put on the outside, just easily creating 5-6 yards of separation. It was great to see. Like, honestly, him and Elijah Moore actually on the Jets, who's been banged up, but hopefully is going to be playing against the Eagles this weekend. Like, it's almost better, I think, for fantasy investors that they got a little bit banged up this preseason, because if we saw them going out there making the big plays that we know they're going to be capable of with the opportunity they're getting, that's when we see, Marquez Callaway jump up 20 wide receiver spots like overnight. So it might not be the end of the world that he was a little bit nicked up. AJ Brown was like that. We had the BC Johnson over Justin Jefferson reports going this time last year. So just, again, the only knock we have on Devonta Smith is his weight, but everyone I trust, that even more so than myself in terms of just prospect evaluation, Mike Renner, Josh Norris, like all these guys I really respect, just say, yeah, if we had on-field evidence of the weight being a problem, then we could question it. We really don't. So you throw in the reality that he's the pretty much undisputed number one receiver in this offense. And yeah, man, I have him, I think, wide receiver 25 or 26 right now. So I'm all in on it. And I really think, you don't even need to draft him that high in a lot of these leagues. He's a great option for pretty much anyone there in the middle rounds.